Football was now a truly global, visible sport, as the 1970s had proven, and the World Cup its most significant event, both in terms of prestige and viewing figures. However, while the first 6 World Cups saw an average of 4.28 goals per game, peaking in Switzerland in 1954 with 5.38, the 1960s onwards saw a general trend of decline that reached its lowest ebb in Italia 90, where a paltry 2.21 goals per game was scored. Defence was king as the free-scoring 50s receded from view, but Spain 82 did provide some respite from the doldrums. Brazil continued their evolution towards becoming every neutral's favourite team by deploying what became known as the Magic Square. Deep-lying playmakers Falcao and Cerezo played behind attacking midfielders Socrates and Zico. Ahead, Serginho was a brutishly physical centre-forward who dragged markers around, while Eder had licence to drift into wide spaces, supplemented by one or both of the attacking midfielders. Width came from energetic fullbacks, as was customary with Brazilian teams, and the enormous movement, slick triangular passing, and space created by Serginho meant that Brazil played with fluency and flair. Nonetheless, they couldn't progress from Group C in 1982, denied by eventual champions Italy in what Jonathan Wilson says was probably the greatest World Cup game ever. They did, however, beat Argentina in a tempestuous affair. Italy was still shackled to some form of catenaccio, though Enzo Berzot, like previous Italian managers before him, had tried to shift away from a style of pure contain and break by injecting more creativity. Gaetano Scirea, a converted midfielder, played as a genuine libero, stepping up into midfield and operating as a playmaker from the back. The elegant and thoroughly modern Juventus and Italy captain never received a red card in his career. The two centre-backs, Claudio Gentile and Fulvio Collovati, were very much in the traditional Italian stopper mode though, and with sitting midfielder Gabriele Oreali, provided a screen that allowed Scirea to drift forwards, Antonio Cabrini to get forwards from left-back, and Bruno Conti to shuttle up and down the right flank. Though Italy played with 2 nominal centre-forwards, Paolo Rossi was a pure predator who stayed close to goal, with support acts Francesco Graziani or Alessandro Altobelli much more inclined to drop off or pull wide, much as Eder did for Brazil. It was a form of catenaccio, though with a skillful sweeper like Scirea, a truly world-class midfielder in Marco Tardelli and Rossi up front, this was not quite the dour, lumpen Italy of old. West Germany also played with a sweeper in what could be seen as a 3-5-2 or a 5-3-2. Wolfgang Dremmler and Paul Breitner sat in midfield, while Felix Magath or Karl-Heinz Rummenigge played as an attacking midfielder, joined by Pierre Littbarski dropping from centre-forward. Manfred Kautz and Hans-Peter Bregel were fullbacks, but who had to get forwards to provide width, at least in the midfield areas, though again the outlook from the West Germans was generally to stifle and wait for the attacking trio to produce something. It wasn't enough for the final though, as Italy beat the West Germans 3-1. Breitner's goal a consolation with 7 minutes to go. Stifle and wait. This became something of a theme in 1986 and 1990. When the Magic Square cannot even get out of the group stages, then it does suggest that defence should have primacy over attack, tactically if not aesthetically. However, as Carlos Bilardo, the boss of Argentina, found out in '86, sometimes you have to adjust because of one player. In this case, Bilardo had Diego Maradona. How does one create a system that works defensively but incorporates the mercurial genius of Maradona? Bilardo's answer was to create a genuine 3-5-2. By pushing the fullbacks up to become wide midfielders, playing a sweeper who was less creative and allowing Maradona to roam and Jorge Burruchaga to get forwards from midfield, covered by Sergio Batista, Bilardo created a system that pressured the sides playing a more defensive 5-3-2 or overmanned those using a traditional back 4. As wingers became less fashionable and teams created width primarily through fullbacks, Bilardo recognised that making fullbacks into midfielders ate up all of the space into which the opposition wide men could run, putting them immediately on the back foot. And in the middle of this system, Maradona. The diminutive genius could essentially do what he wanted, where he wanted. Free to play as a second striker or an attacking midfielder, central or wide, behind a hard-working striker in Jorge Valdano and 7 runners who would cover his absence from the defensive shape. West Germany, who were to be beaten finalists again in '86, played a form of lopsided 5-3-2 that was, in effect, a form of 4-3-3 with a fourth defender, a libero. This style, borrowed from the Ajax of a decade earlier, was favoured by manager Franz Beckenbauer because he himself was a fine sweeper. The back three man-marked, with the libero the free man to push up and make a 3-4-3, while one of the front three, or two, dropped off into the hole to make what was, in effect, a 3-4-1-2 in possession and a 4-3-2-1 out of possession. The final saw a 3-2 win for Argentina as they pinned back the West Germans, taking advantage of their lack of natural width and used Maradona to tie up several markers at one time. The defeat meant that Beckenbauer had lost the World Cup final both as a player and a manager. The World Cup was Maradona's. The roles were reversed in 1990 as West Germany beat Argentina 1-0 in the final. West Germany, with Rudi Völler and Jürgen Klinsmann playing ahead of deep-lying playmaker Lothar Matthäus, supported by creative attacking midfielders Thomas Hassler and Pierre Libarski, who had been a striker in 1982, should have been an attacking whirlwind. But the focus was now very much on system, hard running, and only allowing a few players the genuine freedom to roam from position. 3-5-2 was the norm, used even by England. The Three Lions featured Paul Gascoigne, David Platt and Chris Waddle, and played with more freedom than most sides at the tournament. But physicality and closing of space, as encouraged by the 3-5-2 revolution, stifled much of the joie de vivre that football had experienced in the 70s and before. Great players could still shine, like Rossi in '82 or Maradona in '86, but the system was king and defenders had primacy. It would take yet more tactical change to enliven football again, but never again would teams play with quite the same abandon as Brazil in 1982.